David Fajgenbaum. Welcome to the Fieldswell Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's an honor to have you. And I'm super pumped up because the last moment I saw you, we were in Stockholm of all places, at this incredible conference called Brilliant Minds. And I was so moved by your talk and your story. And so I'm so pumped up for this moment because we get to dive a little deeper and I get to learn even more about you. So thank you for taking the time today.
Well, the feelings are so mutual. I've been really looking forward to this and keeping that conversation going from Stockholm.
Yeah. So you're not only a physician scientist and best-selling author, but you're also the very first patient, I believe, of Every Cure, which is the organization you helped create.
That's right. Yeah, I'm alive because of a drug that wasn't made for my disease, a drug that I thought could treat my disease called Castleman's, and I
Mhm.
tested on myself and it saved my life, and that has just inspired what's now been an 11-year mission where all I can think about all day every day is how many more drugs are out there that are made for one disease that can actually treat another disease and save a patient's life today.
I think no one realizes how many drugs could be repurposed. And we'll get into that shortly. But for those who are unfamiliar, what is Castleman's disease and how did it enter your life?
Sure, Castleman's is a hyperinflammatory disease, which basically means your immune system attacks all your vital organs until they shut down and it kills you. It's a horrible, relentless disease. Early on, I had to be treated with a lot of different chemotherapies to try to get my disease in
Mhm.
remission, but I kept relapsing and eventually discovered, this drug, sirolimus, I mentioned, which had never been used before for my disease. But based on the research I did in the lab, I thought that it might work. And like you mentioned, most people aren't aware that the drugs that we have can often be used in new ways. And there's some amazing examples where drugs have already been repurposed, but there's a lot more opportunities that are sort of waiting to be proved out.
Yeah. And so, what were some of the early symptoms? I mean, were you immediately kind of in the hospital when this hit you, or was it a slow progression?
Well, I was a med student at the time, so I was actually working in the hospital, when I got
Wow.
sick. So I actually was on an OBGYN rotation, and I had just delivered babies into the world for the first time ever, which is, like, such a pinnacle of medical school. And then, within a matter of weeks, I went from, this really amazing pinnacle, to being critically ill in the ICU. The same hospital, I just was now a patient, because my liver, my kidneys, my bone marrow, my heart, and my lungs were shutting down. And it started out with just a little more fatigue than I'd ever felt before, and that sort of turned into abdominal pain. I noticed lumps in my neck. I didn't know what they were. Um, and it happened pretty fast. Over just a couple weeks, I went from this totally healthy med student. I was a former college quarterback, very healthy, to all of a sudden being uh,
Yeah.
critically ill in the hospital.
Wow. It's very wild, but it's almost as if you were the chosen one to go through something like this because the world needed someone like you to persevere and say, "Wait a minute, what else can we do? I'm not giving up."
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Lauren. I'm lucky. I've had a lot of amazing supporters around me, that have helped me get through this. So I definitely couldn't have done it on my own. But I'm really thankful, that I've had so much support and been able to get to where I am. And yeah, I just feel so committed to this mission. That if I'm going to be lucky enough to be alive because of a medicine that I wasn't supposed to get, I better find as many medicines as I can for other people.
Totally. So I know, from my own journey, I had traumatic brain injury when I was younger in the hospital for different neurological symptoms, nowhere near as severe as what you went through. But I know the hospital can be a very dark place to be when you're seeking an answer that no one can seem to find. And I've heard you talk about this support system and your family around you, and you having this vision inside of you of the life you wanted to create. You wanted, to marry your girlfriend who was there with you. You wanted to create a family. You had all these things that you still wanted to live for. Can you touch on that for a moment? How this maybe kept you going through this really difficult time?
Absolutely. Well, I'm sorry to hear that you've gone through so much, on your journey as well, and hopefully you're doing really well now. I think no matter what the challenge is in life, I think that you have to have in your mind what you're fighting for. At least in
Mhm.
my opinion, I don't have the strength or the fortitude to fight a fight unless I know what I'm fighting for. And so for me,
Mhm.
having that vision for what I wanted, which, as you mentioned, a family with my girlfriend at the time, Caitlin, she's now my wife, and I dreamed of, taking care of patients in memory of my mom. My mom passed away from cancer when I was in college, and I dreamed of discovering drugs to help patients, and those dreams, like those crystal clear visions, helped me to fight through, in hindsight, the most challenging months of my life when I was in critical condition, and every breath was so painful. It's like getting stabbed, and it was a horrible, horrible period of time. But that vision for what I was fighting for was critical. And then, as you alluded to, you can't just have a vision. You've got to have people you care about and people that care about you fighting alongside you. So I shared earlier before we began chatting today, my sister lives just north of you in Newport Beach, California. She was by my side. My other sister was by my side. My girlfriend Caitlin, they were all around me. My dad was around me. I was getting strength from them, and I think that you can truly get strength from the people you love. And then the third thing is that I was really taking things one step at a time. I wasn't trying to say, "I think I can fight this for 6 months," because I honestly don't think I could have known that I could fight it for 6 months, but I knew I could fight it for 1 more minute and maybe 1 more hour, and those minutes and hours added up to a lot of time.
Wow, incredible. And I feel like we've just scratched the surface on the severity of your symptoms. I know you went through numerous rounds of chemo, essentially read your last rites of your life, and they were telling you you weren't going to make it.
That's right. On 5 different occasions, doctors told my family, and this is 5 times over the course of 3.5 years, told my family, "This is it, David's fought a good fight, but the drugs aren't working. He's out of options. Say your goodbyes." And, the first time we did that, and of course, we never imagined that I would survive, but chemotherapy saved my life, each of these times. So the treatment got me out of it, but we never imagined that I would, because, I was so close to the brink of death. And, looking back on it, it feels like such a dream, Lauren, that, like, I'm sitting here, and
Yeah.
actually
Oh my
next
gosh.
month will mark 15 years, from when I got sick, and, like,
Yeah.
there's no way like, 15 years ago, I would have ever dreamed that I would be here.
Oh
It's
my
crazy.
gosh, living the life you're living. I mean, it is really incredible. You've authored a book, you're speaking at some of the most amazing conferences around the world. You're really sharing your story, and you're transforming the lives and saving the lives of so many other people. So bring us back to the moment, because I know there was a moment. This was your idea to be prescribed a specific drug to try and remedy your symptoms, correct?
That's right, yeah, so this is now at this stage, I'd almost died 5 times from the disease. Chemotherapy kept sort of barely, saving my life, but I knew it was gonna come back, and it was, January of 2014. My girlfriend, Caitlin, and I, we had a wedding date, May 24th, 2014, in our future, and, I just wanted to make it to May 24th, 2014.
Oh
If I
my
didn't make it to May
gosh.
25th, like,
Yeah.
I was fine. I was gonna make it to May
Oh.
24th, and, so I started running experiments on my own blood samples, and I'd been collecting blood samples, in the weeks leading up to that last relapse, and from the experiments, I thought this one part of my immune system, was turned into overdrive, and that if I turned it off, with a drug that was made for another disease, actually made for organ transplant rejection, that I thought maybe it could work, and it hadn't been tried before. We had no idea if it was gonna work, but I talked to a colleague of mine who was at NIH in DC, and he agreed to prescribe it, and, within days of starting it, I noticed an immediate improvement in my symptoms. My blood work got better, but I also knew that I couldn't celebrate too soon. I mean, a few times before I had celebrated, like when I got better, "Oh my gosh, maybe it's not gonna come back." It kept coming back. So this time I was like, "I can't celebrate too soon," but it's been over 11 and a half years
Uh-huh.
now, so,
Oh
we're
my
definitely
gosh.
celebrating.
Well, congratulations. A celebration is in order.
Yes.
So talk to us about the cost of, I find this fascinating, the cost of creating a brand new drug compared to repurposing an existing one, and why you think this isn't already being done.
Great question. So to develop a brand new drug, it will cost you between 1 and $2 billion, and it'll take between 10 and 15 years. And all of our resources go into new drug development within our healthcare system. And when you can contrast that to drug repurposing, which we've repurposed drugs in some cases for less than $1 million all in to prove that the drug works, sometimes more like 5 to $10 million. But even on the high end of $10 million, that means it's less than 1% of the cost of new drug development. And that's the more expensive repurposing. So your question is right, like, well, why aren't we doing that? Well, the reason that no one does drug repurposing is
Yeah.
that though it costs way, way, way less, there's no financial upside at all. So, like, if you develop a new drug and you spend $2 billion on your new drug, you can expect to make 5 to $10 billion in return. So the math adds up. Like, you put two in, you get 5 out. Well, when you do drug repurposing, what we do, you put 1 million in, 5 million, 10 million, you save just as many lives, you help just as many people, but the drug already exists, it's already generic, and it's already being manufactured, so you make no money off of it.
You're just saving lives.
You're
Yeah.
only saving lives. It's like, "Wait a minute." I'm like, "Wait, what am I missing here?" And I think that's what was
Wow.
so shocking. It's like, when you're a patient and you're alive, like, I took my 3 pills today. I'm alive because of the medicine. It's like, "Wait a minute, only saving lives is, like, not enough? How is that possible?"
Totally. I've also heard how AI has been a huge help in this, because how many existing diseases are there compared to how many existing drugs are there that could potentially be a match for one another?
Yeah, that's such a great point. I mean, I love what we're doing with every cure. It just would not be possible to do what we're doing at scale without AI. And so there's 4,000 drugs that are approved, and there's about 18,000 human diseases. So if you tried every single drug for every disease, you would have 75 million attempts. So 75 million probabilities that a drug could work for a disease. Humans could never, ever, ever comprehend those sorts of things and compare 75 million things at once. But artificial intelligence actually is able to do that. And so we actually have an AI platform that scans across the world's knowledge of every drug, every disease, every gene, every protein, and then gives us a score from 0 to 1, to tell us how likely the AI platform thinks that drug will work for that disease. So there's a lot of things that are close to 0 that aren't likely to work, but the stuff close to 1, the 0.99s, that's a great place for a bunch of humans like me and my colleagues at Every Cure to start looking. And we look at the top of the list and we find really interesting stuff like lidocaine for breast cancer or leucovorin for autism, pranolol for ALS, things that like our minds never would have imagined, but because AI is sifting through everything, it can detect these matches.
So incredible. What's one discovery or breakthrough that you have found at Every Cure that has blown your mind?
I think the leucovorin for autism one has blown my mind. I mean, there's definitely a few, so what we've learned is that there's a fraction of kids with autism that have a vitamin deficiency in their brain. They basically have an antibody that prevents an important vitamin called folate from getting into their brain, and if you give them this old drug called leucovorin, which was actually made to help to address side effects of a old chemotherapy, it's like a 50-year-old drug, that if you give that drug that was supposed to, help with chemotherapy side effects to kids that have autism and have these
Mhm.
antibodies, you can improve their verbal communication skills. And so, like, I got a text message a couple weeks ago from an aunt of a young boy who said his first words ever just a week after starting leucovorin. And it's like, I'm a parent. I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and the ability for them to speak to me and tell me what they want and what they need is just everything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Oh
like
my gosh.
it's everything. And so to have kids that are not able to do that because of something that's so fixable, a vitamin deficiency
Hmm.
that we just wouldn't have come across if we weren't taking this all versus all approach. That's totally blown my mind, and I am so passionate about figuring out how can we get the word out about this blood test. It's called a folate receptor antibody test, or FRAT. How can we get the word out about that blood test so that more kids can get tested for it and maybe benefit from this medicine?
Yeah, incredible. I mean, the belief that it's possible, that there's something out there that maybe you just haven't found yet.
Yeah, it's I think that sort of belief that things are possible, the hope that comes from that belief, and then for me, there's this incredible circuit that occurs, and that's that, um, first off, I'm alive because of this repurposed drug, so of course I can
Mhm.
literally feel the benefits of a drug, helping a disease that it's not meant for. I also hear from patients all the time with horrible diseases that are suffering, that are like, "Please find a drug for us." And cases where we haven't been able to help people that just creates this, like, just desire to help them, and then there
Right.
are patients that we do help, and so there's this circuit, it's like, the patients we help drive us to do more work, the patients we aren't able to help and haven't been able to help drive us to do more work, but it creates a bit of a circuit here, and in doing so, I think we've been able to generate some hope.
Yes, definitely. I'm curious if there's something like what the biggest thing about drug development or medical research that you wish more people knew, kind of like something that you feel like you know from the behind the scenes of everything you've built with Every Cure that most people don't often think about or know.
Yeah, yeah. I think probably the one that sticks out for me is that, when a drug company develops a drug, they oftentimes consider between 10 to 30 different diseases that they think that drug might work in, but they're only able to pursue 2, 3, 4, 5, up to a handful of diseases because there's only so many diseases they can pursue because of the cost of developing a drug for a given disease. But they think about dozens more diseases, and that's because there's plausibility that that drug could be useful in more diseases. And so a lot of times with every cure, we're not necessarily uncovering something that a human hasn't thought up already. Like, a lot of times we're uncovering what humans thought about, but they just didn't pursue because of some systemic barrier. Maybe they said, "Oh, that disease is too rare," or, "Oh, that's not gonna be profitable enough," or, "Oh, maybe the side effects are gonna be too bad for that disease." Well, it turns out there's a lot of really bad diseases where those patients are willing to take on the side effects, right? So there's a lot of and of course, AI is able to discover new potential treatments, but I love when AI just uncovers what we humans have already
Yeah.
figured out, but just our system isn't pushing forward.
100%. I'm so grateful for AI.
Me too.
I like to jokingly like my assistant, my therapist, my business coach. You know what I mean? It's how can we use it to our advantage? And you're doing that in an incredible, very helpful way.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I talk about the potential of these drugs to be useful in so many ways, and it might actually even be helpful to just share a couple examples. Obviously,
Hmm.
sirolimus is saving my life, but there are a couple other examples that come to mind. One of them is thalidomide, which many listeners will maybe recognize the name thalidomide because it caused horrible birth defects about 70 years ago. It was a really bad drug, caused all these birth defects, and then researchers figured out that it could be effective for leprosy, and then also for multiple myeloma, this horrible form of cancer, and it turns out that it is. So it's approved for treating this infectious disease, leprosy, that's so different from myeloma. But the reason it worked in both is because even though the diseases look very different, they act very different, they actually share the same underlying problem. So you can hit the same thing with the same drug and have effects in both diseases, which I think is just an important that's just to sort of get to your question around like what's unexpected. I think it's unexpected how many things drug companies consider for a given drug, and I think it's also unexpected just how many different diseases the same drug can be effective in.
Totally. And I go back to you in med school, studying medicine. Like, how did you find that drug you thought may have a potential to save your life?
I was on weekly chemotherapy going up at my last relapse, and, we were hopeful that maybe it would keep me in remission, but I really didn't think it was gonna work, and so I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna store blood samples on myself every couple weeks. That way, if the disease does come back, then I would have sort of evidence for what happened," and thankfully, those blood samples were stored, and then the research was done that uncovered this drug.
Yeah, incredible. There's the keep searching, keep looking, keep trying new things, keep seeking answers.
It's that. It's about yes, it's about never taking no for an answer, continuing to push, and then it's also realizing that in a lot of cases, the solution's actually right in front of us, and this isn't just in medicine with repurposing. There's so many great examples across business where it may appear like this brand new innovative concept, but really it's a repurposing of a previous tool. One of my favorite examples is, the very first telephone was actually a hearing aid, and it was repurposed from being a hearing aid to being a telephone. Radios weren't made for playing music early on. Radios were made for ships to communicate with one another. Those got repurposed into playing music. And same thing with computers. There's so many examples all around us of things that we're like, wow, I wonder who invented this. Well, the reality is someone did invent it, but in most cases, they really repurposed a previous invention to create that new invention. So I think we should always be aware that no matter what our problem is, there's oftentimes a solution that's around us already.
Definitely. So I know, as someone building a business and you to the extreme, like saving lives with every cure, it's something that I've heard you can want to do with the majority of your time, but it's important to find the balance with family, with personal life. How do you do that? A lot of our listeners, are striving entrepreneurs or leaders. How do you find the time I like the word harmony over balance, but talk to us a little bit more about the behind the scenes. We know you're on this purpose, mission driven business, but what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I really struggle with the term balance and also with having balance in my life.
Hmm.
I mean, I am so focused on what we're
Yeah.
doing, and I'm just driven to figure out as many treatments as I can, and it's you can almost imagine this what's going through my mind, and that's that the faster we find these drugs, new use of these drugs, the faster we help people, but also the slower we find them, the more people that literally die because we didn't find it in time.
Right.
And so there's
Right.
this tremendous sense of urgency, and I counter that. I mean, and that's like you can imagine, that's like all encompassing, right? but I counter that sense of urgency and the desire to work around the clock with the fact that I have this amazing wife and 2 amazing kids, Amelia and David, who are 6 and 3, and I've fought so hard to be able to be alive and to have this life.
Mhm.
They're such amazing kids and people, and, so if they weren't so amazing, like, if I didn't have the most amazing wife and those amazing kids, I would work 24/7, but they
Oh
are
my
so
gosh.
amazing that it does
Right.
pull me away from my
Aw.
work to spend time with them, but I definitely don't have balance, and if Caitlin, my wife's listening to this, she will agree with me that I don't have balance, but I'm gonna keep pushing to spend time with them.
We know Caitlin, though. Caitlin's such a big part of your story and gave you a reason to really want to keep living when it was so difficult. So cheers to Caitlin.
Here's to
But
Caitlin,
it's
yes.
it's interesting because once you see the work that you're doing have such a great impact, it completely lights you up and you just can't stop. It's all you want to do. I feel that completely. While at the same time, it's also knowing that to be the best you can be at work, you also need to take care of yourself, especially you knowing you've been there when you weren't feeling your best.
That's exactly right. So I'm interested to hear from you what your tips are in finding harmony. I mean, how do you find harmony in the midst of all these things pulling you in different directions?
Mhm. You know, I'll go back to the basics, like time away from technology, like boundary time in the evenings. And like my phone sleeps in the kitchen from like 8 or 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. And that time for me gives me so much space from everything else that I do my like evening routine. A great night's sleep has been huge just to recharge. I've been so much more productive in my day that just like prioritizing sleep is a big thing on how, because then when I'm in the office, when I'm in action, I have so much energy to create, to show up for what really matters in my life when I prioritize the sleep. But it's hard to do at 32 to have like a 9 p.m. bedtime, you know?
Totally. It is hard, but no, that's I really appreciate you sharing that because 'cause you're right. It's like
Yeah.
investing in sleep will make you more productive during the day. It's funny, I've taken a slightly different approach, which I don't know is necessarily a good one, but, there are these glasses that the Huberman Lab promotes. They're like red glasses that, like, don't allow any so now instead of me going to bed earlier or, like, stopping with my phone, now I, like, put these
Like
glasses
those
on.
glasses on.
I spend, like, 3 hours at night, like, writing
Oh my
emails and doing work.
gosh. I
Um
love that.
but it's not the right solution. I should just
Yeah.
not do that.
Right. And I also like convince myself, like, okay, to me, what I'm building feels like in a sense a startup because
Yeah,
it's still a baby. But I've
yeah,
convinced myself, like, okay, it's a little bit okay to be unbalanced now because now's the time to like go all in. But we'll see
totally.
how that looks like in a couple of years. I don't know. I don't see myself slowing down, but I do love the wellness and self-care. And that's why I wanted to build a
Right.
brand around like peak potential. How do we become the best version of ourselves? And that does come with prioritizing your well-being.
I totally agree, and as someone who's I've been saying that for about 20 years,
Mm.
so, I've been saying for 20 years, that this is a busy time, and, in a year or
Right,
2,
of
it'll get
20 years,
easier,
here we
so
go. Yeah, I'll update you next year, David, we'll see where we're at.
right.
Anything you're excited about with every cure that you'd like to share with our listeners that we didn't already cover?
Sure, so, I think the exciting new thing is that we're starting to think and we'll think very critically around, what we call the impact team within every cure. So we receive funding from the U.S. government, an agency called ARPA-H, to build out this incredible AI platform, and we've got an amazing team that's continuing to improve the platform that makes predictions for the
Mm,
likelihood of every drug to treat every disease. And then we are an awardee of what's called the Audacious project from TED. The TED Talk folks, they put together this program called
mhm,
Audacious that funds our laboratory work and our clinical trials. But there's a third step to this, and that's that after you prove that a drug works in a clinical trial, in the lab, in humans, you gotta
mhm.
get the word out to people. Um, and it's a marketing question. It's like strategic marketing, it's communications, it's awareness raising, and that has nothing to do with AI, has nothing to do with, like, clinical trials. It's a whole different ballgame, and it's a whole different set of skills, and so, we're actually about to launch a search for a VP of impact, which will be responsible for that last leg of this, which is
Yeah.
raising awareness, reaching out to patients, and I think I'm excited about it because it's the embodiment of what we do. Like, when we do AI work, when we do trials, it's not just to do trials or AI, it's to help people, and so we're creating this last leg of the relay to really make sure we get this drug out to these drugs out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, to spread awareness of everything that you're doing.
I mean, how cool is it that, like, a tweet can help someone to speak and that, like, a social media post can save someone's life? And that's where we wanna get to is, like, prove out enough of these so that way literally anyone listening to this can retweet us, can do a social media post, and that actually helps to get a drug to someone who wouldn't get it otherwise.
Well, I know I was reading your Humans of New York post this morning, and I was very moved by that story. And I'm grateful it's on there because more people need to see what you're doing so they can become a part of it, so they can also believe that their cure might be out there.
That's right. Yeah, and I was so appreciative, to the
Mhm.
Humans in New York team to highlight me. I am a human, but I'm not actually of New York. I'm a human of Philadelphia, but it was really special that they profiled our work, and it's been just really special to see the response. The community's really gotten behind what we're doing.
The sense of community
It's
is
amazing.
is major for sure. So, David, as we wrap up, my question for you is: if you were sitting with someone who just received a life-threatening diagnosis, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I'd say that, there's a few things that I strongly recommend you do. The first is to figure out who is the leading expert for your disease. You've gotta figure out where they are, you gotta go to them. If it means you get in a car and you drive for 2 days, you've gotta go to the expert to understand what is the leading edge knowledge for your disease. So that's one. The second is that you've gotta ask a lot of questions. Even if you're with the world's expert, you can't just assume the world's expert's gonna have all the answers for you because the world may not have all the answers for your disease, and unfortunately, for a lot of diseases, the world doesn't have all the answers. So find the expert, keep asking questions, don't stop asking questions. The third thing is that you have to be a project manager for your health. Like, none of us wanna do it. All of us want to assume that if we go to the doctor, they're gonna manage everything, they're gonna
Mm.
track things. But
Hmm.
we have a critical illness, we gotta project manage. We gotta make sure that the blood tests are run, that the treatment is given when it's supposed to be given, that you're getting the right treatment. There's a lot of stuff that just goes wrong in the system, and so you gotta project manage. And then the last thing I'd say, if you do all those things, and if you've run out of options that the medical community is aware of, the last thing I'd say is that may not mean that there isn't actually a treatment for you. Just because the medical community has run out of options that they're aware of, there might actually be another treatment. But the only way to find that other treatment is to get involved in research now, meaning to find who's the researcher that might be able to do experiments on your blood samples. What's the name of the research organization that you can talk to really move things forward. So that way, if you get to your last leg, the work's already been done to find a treatment that
Uh-huh.
can help.
Yeah, keep fighting for your life.
Keep fighting,
Uh-huh.
exactly. That's probably that's the short answer.
Yeah.
Don't stop fighting, right?
David, where can our listeners find you online? How can we support Every Cure? Um, Let us know how we can best support you, and where we can find more of the work you're doing and follow along with your story.
Sure. So, you can follow, me on social media. I have a horribly difficult last name to spell, David Fajgenbaum, Fajgenbaum. You can find me on social. Um, and you can support Every Cure by going to everycure.org. You can support us by telling us about drugs that have been tried for you. Maybe you got a drug that wasn't intended for your disease and it helped you, or maybe it didn't help you. Let us know at everycure.org/ideas. You can donate to our research to help us to do more clinical trials, more laboratory work to help more patients at everycure.org/donate. And you can also just help to spread awareness about the drugs we're working on. So if you follow me on social, anytime we find a drug that is useful and effective that we want to get to more people, we're sharing it through Instagram and through Facebook and LinkedIn. So find us and please share it. Because like I said earlier, there are few opportunities in life where literally sharing a social media post could be the difference between someone speaking, or someone living.
Yeah, so true. Between life or death.
Exactly, and I guess one other place you could go to is chasingmycure.com, where sort of all the stuff is in one place. I wrote a book about my journey chasing my cure, and that sort of serves as a home base for all this.
Wonderful, David. Thank you so much for taking the time. I feel so connected to you and what you're doing, and I'm so grateful to be able to share it with our platform here. And I'm just so moved by what you're doing. I look forward to continuing to follow you and all the exciting news and updates with Every Cure.
Well, thank you so much, Ron. This has been so fun. It was so great to meet you in Sweden, and, yeah, looking forward to staying in touch.